Mary Mamani lives in El Alto, just outside Bolivia's capital, La Paz. Like many other Latin American countries, the government has imposed a mandatory quarantine for all citizens. But Mamani, who works as a taxi driver, is afraid about how she's going to feed her 8-year-old son.
As a mother, it is painful because you open your refrigerator and see it empty. Every day the food runs out. As a mother, I don't know what I'm going to feed my son. What are you doing? As a mum, I stop eating. For example, 3 weeks ago, I bought some chickens because I was working with my taxi. I keep the chicken for my son. I don't eat. My son is the one who eats. I prefer that my son eats and not me.
Coronavirus is just starting to spread in Latin America, and governments are taking harsh measures to control it. There's over 10,000 cases in the region, and those figures are likely to increase. In Argentina, President Alberto Fernández has just extended the ongoing quarantine until mid-April. Thousands have been detained in Argentina, and the military is using helicopters to control compliance with the quarantine.
Security forces are controlling the entrance to the city of Buenos Aires. They're detaining and confiscating the vehicles of those who do not have permits to be on the streets. It's an enormous challenge for authorities here, but the government says that this is the necessary measure to prevent the spread of the virus.
But there is one country whose president remains in denial about the dangers of COVID-19. Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro, who insists governments should prioritize the economy.
The virus is there, and we're going to have to face it. We're going to have to face it like men, not like children. We're going to face the virus with the reality of life. We're all going to die someday.
On Sunday, 2 of his tweets were deleted by Twitter because they violated the rules of use by potentially putting people at greater risk of transmitting the virus. The posts were videos of the tour that the president took in the federal district, contrary to the guidelines of his own Minister of Health, who recommended that people stay at home as a measure to fight the coronavirus. In Brazil's slums, NGOs are stepping up efforts to help the poor.
The investment in social security in the country is being reduced from year to year in the last 4 years, and believe it, in this year, in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, we're having reductions on Bolsa Familia. So that's absolutely crazy.
Government action is the only way millions of people in the region have to survive the months ahead. Teresa, Al Jazeera, Buenos Aires.
Well, let's talk to Gustavo Ribeiro about the situation in Brazil and how the president there is handling this crisis. He's a journalist and founder of the Brazilian Report, which is an online magazine. He's via Skype from Sao Paulo. Gustavo, very good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. So why is President Jair Bolsonaro seeking to minimize this pandemic? And is his messaging, his approach, is it resonating at all with Brazilians?
Hello, thanks for having me. President Bolsonaro is doing a political calculation. What he's doing is, in Brazil's political system, the president can only do so much, and state governors and mayors have a lot of power. So he's putting the burden of stopping the economy on local administrations, and if they work, because every single governor in Brazil has put at least some restrictions in place. São Paulo, for instance, where I am, we are the largest, the most populated state in Brazil and the country's economic heart. And for a week now, the state has been in quarantine and will remain in quarantine for at least 7 more days. So if these measures work and the country can at least seek some normality in the short-term future, he will say, you see, I told you it was nothing. He has said time and again that it's just a sniffle, that we have seen worse pandemics, that the 09 H1N1 pandemic was worse. And his calculation is if the country stops, if unemployment explodes, his approval ratings, which are already low, will go even further down.
Right. So how are Brazilians feeling about the way he's handling this then? Is his messaging resonating at all with them? I read that one-third of Brazilians think he's doing an excellent job handling this pandemic. Who are these Brazilians?
Well, opinion polls show that while the president has retained his approval ratings, most of Brazilians do not agree with how he's handling the COVID-19 crisis. Still, they approve his overall job. But yes, his message does resonate with a lot of people, especially young males, lower middle class. Yesterday, we had motorcades in several state capitals asking for the country to resume normal activity. So the president's words are actually having a practical effect in a lot of regions here.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people, of course, compare him to Donald Trump, but even Donald Trump, his ally, has changed his rhetoric somewhat. Do you think this economy first plan that Jair Bolsonaro is putting forward might cost him politically, ultimately?
I think it will certainly cost him because companies are already laying off people. It's impossible to just go back to normal life because the problem is not the restrictions, it's not the quarantine, it's the virus. And if we still have the virus, we'll still have problems. So a lot of companies are already laying off people. The economy minister just announced today that they will suspend unemployment data, to disclose unemployment data for now. And last week we saw in the US that we had a record number of people fighting for unemployment. So the government seems to be actively withholding this important data that might cost Bolsonaro politically.
Thank you so much for talking to us about this. Gustavo Ribeiro, a Brazilian journalist, joining us there from Sao Paulo. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.